Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the Kriss Vector SDP G2. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts, linked to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Player, formerly Utreon, where we can do some types of videos that are no longer allowed on YouTube. This particular one is chambered in 10mm. They're also available in 9, 40, and 45 ACP. They're also available in an assortment of colors. This is the FDE one. They also have them in black, white, OD green, gray, and then 3 different variations of a camo pattern, a black and FDE and a white camo. So really an assortment of camos and other colors that you can get these in. The MSRP on these is kind of pricey. They're proud of these things. This one being the pistol varies anywhere from $1,600 to about $1,850 in MSRP, depending on which of the color variations you want or which calibers you pick. And this particular one is $1,650 MSRP. So they're not inexpensive. They do tend to be difficult to find, and they seem to rarely go less than MSRP. I got lucky with this one. I found this one under MSRP and I snagged it. They use Glock magazines, just like this one. So this one or the magazine that's in it came with it. They're actually Glock magazines. They don't even have Kriss Vector or anything stamped on them. They just ship with a Glock magazine. This is the same magazine that would fit in something like this Glock 40 or a Glock 20 or Glock 29. So theoretically you could have your carry pistol or your sidearm in 10mm, be one of the other Glocks, and then have the magazine interchangeability. The only thing is it does require the full-size magazines from the Glocks. This thing isn't necessarily small. It has a 5.5-inch barrel. There is a rifle version with a longer barrel. It's 4140 chromoly, and it's a nitride coating. The length on this thing front to back is 16.75, and it weighs 5.9 pounds. So they're a little bit bulkier, but at the same time, it gives you a little bit more to hold on to. From a controls perspective, it's relatively easy to use. The magazine release is here. Now, one of the things that can happen if you're holding it here, depending on your hands, 2 different things can happen. One is you can bump the magazine release. That didn't happen to us while shooting, but you also can hit the slide stop or the bolt stop. And that did happen to me while shooting. It didn't cause it to malfunction, but it did cause it to not lock back on the last round. I interfered with this operating. That was just me holding it. There is a thing you can get that kind of goes in here, brings your hand a little bit further away from the magazine release and the bolt stop, and will minimize that probability. The charging handle pulls up, it's spring loaded, and it is non-reciprocating, so that you can have your hands up around or near it and you're not going to get slapped by it. Got a Picatinny rail on the bottom and a Picatinny rail on the top. And one of the things I saw that kind of made me concerned a little bit is you could kind of easily, if you weren't paying attention, get your thumb out towards that muzzle. So this I bought from Kriss's site, and this is not very expensive, but it kind of prevents you from doing that, keeps your hand away from the muzzle. Normally when I don't add features to a gun before I review it for the first time, but I did that because I wanted to make sure I kept my hand safe. Now, as far as operating this, it's easy to do. You just pull it back, and it's a fairly short travel. And you can see the bolt operating over there, and of course you can also see that this is unloaded. So it's relatively easy to use, a little bit bulky to hold just because it's a different shape. The bolt actually travels back, and then part of the carrier assembly travels up and down in here. So instead of like an AR where the bolt goes straight back, the bolt and the carrier are separate. So the bolt comes back, pivots, and comes down through here. And this is a straight blowback gun. All of the calibers are straight blowback. Does seem to be reliable. The only issue we had with this is on the full magazine, completely full magazine, had a couple times where it didn't want to chamber the top round. That's probably just spring seating in. Unless that continues as the thing is run and used and the magazines are used, I'm not going to worry about that too much. If it were happening in the middle of the session, that might be more of an issue. The sights that come with it they're basically rifle type sights. They're flip up, and it's got a front black post that is adjustable and a rear aperture You can also flip this, oops, you can flip this, if I can do it with my hand here, to a peep sight. Well, with my eyes, I couldn't see either one of these. So I'm probably going to spend most of the time with the sights flipped down and slap a red dot on it, which it's a full one-piece rail all the way front to back. So wherever you put the red dot, it's going to be stable and solid. You could also put a scope on it, but being a pistol, this is most likely useful for a red dot. It's got a sling swivel at the back, so you could put actually a short sling on it and use that as a tensioner. So you put the strap on it and then push forward to tension it. That may make it a little bit easier to hold and to stabilize. But overall, you've got a lot to get a hold of. It's easy to get a hold of and it's easy to hold. It's just a little different than if you're used to an AR, you're used to cupping it up here, which you can do on this. But you're going to find that somewhere in here is probably going to be more natural feeling just due to the shape of it. Seems to be very well constructed, which is good given the price tag of it. Overall, it seems to be a well done weapon. One thing I want to mention before I move on is that both front and rear sights are fully adjustable as well as removable. So I'm going to show you how to take it apart, and I'm going to make sure that the bolt is in battery, and of course I already cleared it. If I hadn't already cleared it, I would make sure it was unloaded. But you see that the bolt is closed. That's important for taking it apart. There's some pins. There's a pin here, there's a pin here, there's a pin here, don't touch this one yet, and there's a pin here, and you just push them. And you can do it with your finger. There are no tools required. And then pop out the bottom one. Again, just by pushing them forward enough so when I flip it over, they stick out. And then I can pull them out. They got little retaining clips on them, but they do come all the way out. And then you just separate the two halves as square as you can. So the bolt is in here. This is the guide frame that goes all the way around it. And then the one I told you at the beginning not to touch, now you can pull this one out. And then the whole bolt assembly comes out. This has got the spring, the buffer, and basically this is a weight for the blowback mechanism. And then if I put this in the correct way, the bolt would sit in there like this, and it can pivot and hinge. And that's how the whole thing works. So it kind of looks like that when it's in operating mode. So it's really kind of actually be more like this, and then it can slide back. I had to stop and turn it so it could face me because you got to get everything positioned just right. It does go together easy when you're looking at it. And you just slide this back up there and pop the pin back in. And then you'll see the bolt is back in place. Fire control group is up here. So here's the fire control group, the hammer, and this is the ejection port. If you accidentally pull the trigger while this is disassembled, the hammer will come forward and smash into the ejection port and can damage it. So I put it on safe. If I do want to actually operate the trigger, I'll make sure I have my finger on the hammer when I do it, if I have it disassembled and I need to pull the trigger to do some of the cleaning. Reassembly, pretty much as easy as taking it apart. You line all the parts back up. Slam or slide the two pieces together, push the pins back in, which again, if you're doing this, you're not going to be trying to turn it to show on camera. You're going to hold it to make it easy for you, and it's going to go back together relatively easily. Easy thing to live with. A little different because nothing else you're going to have is going to come apart like this. But other than that, once you know how to take it apart and maintain it, comes apart, no tools, normal cleaning, clean the barrel, and everything else is good to go. The barrel is threaded, and it's a 9/16 by 24 thread, so that you could put a suppressor or other muzzle device on there. And of course, there are bigger mags available. We just can't show them on YouTube, but you can get them straight from Kriss. And they sell them complete functional mags, and they also sell them as a conversion kit that you can use on an existing Glock mag to extend it. I would probably just buy the fully complete, ready-to-go ones as opposed to taking apart an existing mag. And by the way, if you do get one of those, it should also work in any of the Glocks. It's still a Glock mag, it's just got an extender on the bottom of it. So last thing I'll show you is the trigger. So there's very light almost no resistance take up. And by the way, I had cycled the bolt because the bolt was in battery, and of course the trigger was cocked. Normally, if you hadn't just finished cleaning it, you would cycle it and also verify that it's clear. After the take-up, it's kind of a relatively long, kind of a creepy brake. It's relatively light. Reset is all the way out, very positive. And then again, that kind of a longish, slightly creepy, but relatively light brake. And I'll also show you all the way out. So there's the reset, and that would be all the way out. But again, that reset position is basically all the way out except for the pre-travel. Decent trigger. It's a battle trigger. It's a combat trigger. The safety is easy to use, and it is ambi, but that's a bit of a negative because the safety will dig into your hand. And the interesting thing is, when I was holding it, I figured it's not going to because it didn't hit my hand. But when it recoils, it does just enough to bring your hand up into it. It didn't damage my hand, it didn't leave a mark, but I could feel it. So after several mags, it was unpleasant. So there's a delete you can get to delete whichever side of this you want. So if you're right-handed like me, you would delete this safety lever. Or if you're left-handed, you probably would delete that safety lever. And all it does is it just turns it into basically a ring like that so that it still functions correctly. I'm going to install that so that it stops smacking my hand. But I really didn't have any behavioral issues with it beyond that first round on a full mag, that safety hitting me, and some of the ergonomics associated with the bolt catch and the magazine release, all of which are relatively easy dealt with. For all other functionality, ejection pattern, everything else, it just worked. It was fun to shoot at the range. It's relatively easy to shoot well. It's mechanically accurate. I had a little trouble with the sights. That'll be easily fixed with a red dot. But it's mechanically accurate. When I was firing it and I couldn't line up the sights really well, but I found a consistent pattern, I could pull a tight group. It just may not have been exactly where I wanted it. So I know the gun's got the potential. This is perfect for a red dot or a long eye relief scope. Beyond that, it's kind of more of a range fun collector gun than practical. There's other things out there that are probably more practical, but this thing is just cool. It's fun, and it's kind of unique. That gives it a reason to have one. If you're really looking for a serious hunting weapon or a serious defensive weapon, there's probably others that are more practical for that purpose. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, and Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.